What's up, guys? So today I will be doing a Bleach chapter 545, the newest chapter as of July 9th, 2013, review and discussion. Chapter review and discussion for future events as well as past events for the arc. So I don't know if I have enough time to elaborate on everything, but we will at least cover what's happened in this chapter. Now, this will not be a summary sort of video. You've already read the chapter, so I'm assuming you guys know what's going on. However, there are a lot of confusing stuff going on in this chapter, so we will be at least briefly mentioning these things in order for further discussion to be placed on them or just clarification. Anyhow, there's a lot to talk about. First, I do have to mention that this week's chapter of Bleach is quite different from most chapters of Bleach. I definitely think Bleach at times has one of the slowest pacing for mangas out there. Sometimes you just get very, large panels with just like a picture of scenery and very little dialogue. Whereas if you look at something like One Piece, there's a lot more dialogue. Anyhow, let's get started on this manga. I just want to briefly skim over some points. The very first scene we see in the chapter is pretty much Ichigo's dad home with Ichigo's family. And this just brings up the point again that this chapter has tons and tons of characters, tons of minor characters that we rarely see, and now they're all being brought up at once. So it's a lot more jam-packed with information, which is very contrasting with what we usually see Bleach chapters to be. I mean, this chapter of Bleach, every single page was crammed with dialogue, which we don't actually see, which I actually commend because I prefer dialogue most of the time, unless we get it every single week. But this was a definite change of pace. I would have preferred more action, of course. I would have preferred this to be focused on what I'm really interested in, which is Ichigo and what's going on with him, and pretty much the main characters we're looking at now. But unfortunately, we're looking at minor characters and tiny small things going on. However, I still have to commend the author for putting dialogue. So enough rambling, let's get on to the first scene. Ichigo's family is at home and they're talking about like freaking food and it's pretty much just random babble. Like, he's complaining that the girl's playing video games too much. Pretty standard stuff, I guess you can say. I would give it, just on these pages alone, I would give that rating from 1 out of 10, probably like 6 or 7, maybe probably 7. I'll give the better rating because it's kind of boring, but at the same time it's a fresh breath of air, you can say. Though if they do the same thing again next week, I'm just gonna be like slightly disappointed because I actually want to see some action for once, and I actually want to focus on the main characters. Ichigo, Kurosaki for sure, the guy with the eye patch. Is his name Kurosaki? I can't remember. Renpachi, I think. Anyhow, let's move on. So after that, I'm just going along with the, I have a computer with all the panels lined up here, so I'm just going along with it. We skip over to something more interesting, and this will lead for some discussion, maybe in the comments or wherever. I did link this video to a couple threads, so maybe there'll be discussion on there. Basically, what we have here is we see we skip to the point where they are training again, and what we see is pretty much I forgot his name, Renji, I think. Renji is complaining about what they're doing, and essentially they're training still, and I would have to say I would give this a rating of 7 or 8 out of 10, because again, it is very slow paced. There's no legit action here, but they are learning something very important. The main point of it, despite all the dialogue, is that they've just entered a new area where the spirit particles are so intense that they had trouble even breathing. Similar to how if humans who have lived on the ground sea level for a while decided to visit like the mountain peaks, they will have a lot more trouble breathing because of their lack of air, because there's a lot less air or oxygen in these higher altitudes. So it's similar to that, but it's actually because of spirit particles. I'm not sure how exactly that works. Maybe they didn't think about the science too much, but I guess if you can twist it, it would be because the spirit particles are taking up too much space, so there's very little oxygen in addition to it. But then again, do they still breathe oxygen in Soul Society? But yeah, the point is, the spirit particles are very hard on them, and they start thinking about whether this goes beyond just spirit particles, and maybe by them just standing there and training on being able to like breathe, because when they first got there, they were on their knees, like gasping for air, and they've already achieved the point where him and Rukia are able to stand with their swords facing each other, and it is implied that the monk guy who's training them is told them to do that. So I have to say, I'm sure there's some, unconscious things or subconscious things that this training technique is doing. The spirit particles might be doing something with their body, and it's probably going to make them stronger. How much stronger? Probably not like a huge boost, but at least it's showing some improvement. That's one thing a lot of people don't realize. For quite a lot of the arcs, a lot of the characters have been very flat in terms of skill level. Like, they're not improving during the arc at all. You see no signs of improvement. It's just them constantly fighting each other and testing their level of skill. And for this arc, we actually do see a lot of the characters improving dramatically, because they're all training to get better, to prepare for the big fight. And the thing is, this is very cool because most of the time, even in other mangas, like, you barely see any of this. And if you do, a lot of times they hit some sort of glass ceiling where they can't improve. But here we see like they are definitely at least increasing to a better level. In other mangas or in other arcs, this isn't the case, because sometimes they'll try and train, and sure, they might get better, but we all know that they still have no chance of beating like the big boss or any of his subordinates. But let's move on. Okay, so the next part is a little bit of a flashback, and essentially what's going on is they are recalling getting their I forgot the Japanese term for it, but I'll go back to the page to it's basically they were getting their dresses fitted, or whatever Shinigami wear. There's a Japanese term for this, but it's basically their Japanese dress. Once I get to the page later on, I will bring up the term, but they were recalling how it was getting fitted, and it was quite the atrocity. I'm assuming it has something to do with something in the private area. Who knows? Who knows? I mean, this isn't the first time they've gone to these moral lengths. I mean, I believe it was exactly last chapter in Bleach where basically what happened was one of the girl commanders in the one of the girl commanders in Uryu's army, not Uryu's army, I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the term, but you know what I'm talking about. The Stern Rider's army. She pretty much did something with one of the subordinates, and I'm sure you know what that thing is, and afterwards sliced them straight in half. So it's kind of like one of those spiders who, those female spiders who consume the prey after they mate. But before we get to that, it's clear that Rukia's brother has survived that attack, and I personally have to say I'm happy for this, but at the same time I'm kind of mad. I can spend quite a while going on Wikipedia and searching up Rukia's brother's name, but you know who I'm talking about. Anyhow, everyone thought he had died, but a lot of people were saying at the same time, come on, it's Bleach. No one actually dies until we're sure they're dead. It's Bleach after all. And so, obviously, here we are again. He's revived again, and he apparently was he is the longest person ever to stay in this hot springs for that long. And obviously that makes sense because he was completely destroyed. They stole his Bankai and used it against him, and his Bankai just like shreds you to pretty much a liquid form because of all the thousands of blades. And so it was no surprise. I personally would have liked him to die. Like, obviously I'd rather no one die, but I just don't like the fact that authors of manga constantly do this. They did this in Naruto with Kakashi. They're constantly bringing like a major character that's still somewhat minor to their death, and they make it seem like very, very clear that this guy's dead. And then they make it slightly subtle by not actually showing his final death. And then like 10 chapters later, he somehow revives. They did it with Kakashi where they shot like, you see like a silhouette of his head being like split through with a kunai, and everyone thinks he's dead, and then he survives. And then they do the same thing with this guy being pierced by so many shards of swords, and he survives too. And they do it in a lot of others like Fairy Tail. If any of you watch Fairy Tail, they did the same thing where pretty much quite recently what happened was pretty much the same thing. One of the dragons shoots someone in the head and he gets revived a couple chapters after. So I personally don't like that. It's one of these like plot teasers or plot twists that has been overdone so many times to a point where any regular manga reader, you don't even have to be a regular manga reader. If you're just like a regular person who's watched like a little bit of movies and a little bit of manga, you've probably gotten so acquainted to it that you're so sick of it and you don't trust anything until you're absolutely sure that person is dead. So I didn't like the fact that he still survived, though I am happy the character is alive. I just don't like when the author uses that kind of thing. Anyhow, let's go to the point I was talking about earlier. So they're getting their new clothing fitted, and it is called a shihakusho. I'm actually not Japanese, so unfortunately I can't pronounce it properly, but it's a shihakusho, which is pretty much what the robes Shinigamis wear, that black robe. I thought at first it just naturally materialized or repaired itself each time you turned on your Bankai or something, or at least that's what it appeared with Ichigo, but apparently you can get it fitted and refitted and cleaned and stuff like that. But obviously this isn't just the normal wardrobe refitting. She's obviously going to, she's like the this girl is like the master of clothing, and she's going to make some ultimate form for you. And so this whole arc so far has pretty much been like a preparation arc. They're doing everything, they're like restructuring everything about you, from your zanpakuto, your sword, to your clothing, to your breathing, and they healed your body and made it stronger. It's very much a complete remodeling of all these characters to make them stronger for the arc, for the next battle arc, which is something that's very good. I wish they would do a better job of it, because I want to see actual legit huge boosts in power level, in fighting capabilities for a lot of these people. But we still have not yet seen that. We're just seeing, like, you know, clothing changes. And this is much needed because when the Stern writers invaded Soul Society, personally I think they mopped up for the most part. Sure, they had that Bankai edge, that stealing Bankai edge that most people were not expecting, but Soul Society definitely needs a huge upgrade if they want to compete. And judging from how the author is, like, I have a feel for like what kind of morals authors have after reading their stuff. I don't think Soul Society or the Stern writers are going to be completely wiped out. I feel like with this manga there's going to be a plot twist where they somehow live in harmony, or the Stern writers get wiped out for the most part, except for the few who have been changed, or Ichigo has shown the light, who will join the Soul Society and make a better world. That's just the type of author this guy is. He doesn't have the heart to kill people off. I mean, it's 500 chapters in, and he doesn't have the heart to kill any of the main characters, which is a good thing and a bad thing. Like, some of these characters are just, they have so little character development that it probably would be better to kill them off or do something with them. But yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about how they refitted them, because not a lot was implied, but apparently it was very gruesome, and the girl who was refitting them for their new outfits told him that he had to take off his fundoshi, which is pretty much like Japanese underwear. And so all I have to say is that in the dialogue after that, they said that the most gruesome part was what happened after he took off the fundashi. So I'm assuming some sort of I'm thinking like she used those like there's this one page where it just shows her in a huge panel and tons of like different types of fabrics shooting out of her or something like that. Let me go to the page. Well, they're not shooting out of her. They're like hanging on the wall and stuff. I'm assuming she possibly did something where all the fabrics like were like hairs, kind of like in Toriko, and you know they went into him and like did all sorts of nasty stuff inside. Like maybe it's just like hairs going everywhere into him, just to measure him perfectly. Who knows? It could be anything. Moving on to the final parts, there's two more scenes. One is with Zero Division Eyeball Monk, Ichibei Hyusube. This is pretty much what I've said before. He tells them of how their spirit particles pretty much knocked them to their feet when they first got there. And now after they are able to stand and nonchalantly chat with each other, he feels like it is now time to bring him into the temple. And the temple has a sign on it, and it said it's a Chinese character for 5, which is quite funny because the author is Japanese. A lot of the words they reference are Japanese, and yet he's implementing clear Chinese references in there, and he's obviously referencing German people, the Nazis, and what else? The English alphabet with A, B, C, D, E, F, and the Stern Writers. So he is referencing quite a lot of stuff, which I like. They actually do it a lot in One Piece too, to a bigger extent, which is pretty cool sometimes. Anyhow, he invites him into a temple. I'm assuming the temple is going to be even crazier in terms of spirit particles. What do you guys think? Leave your predictions in the comments. Right now, go ahead. You have my time. But I personally think it's going to be so heavy that they're going to be knocked to their knees again, even worse. And then they're going to train really hard. So Renji and Rukia are ahead of the pack in terms of the route to training in this area. Ichigo, he's a little bit behind because he had to come to terms with his 2 swords. And yeah, he has 2 swords now, which is pretty cool. He's not the first in Soul Society to have 2 swords. And then there's this final, well, there's technically 2 scenes. I'm going to briefly mention this. You should already know what's going on. And first off, it already introduces like 3 or 4 new characters, well, not new characters, but minor characters we haven't seen in a long time. And basically, it seems like a package is arriving, and we're not sure at all what it is or what's going to happen, but a package has arrived, and it was sent from 2 different people. So we have yet to see what that's all about. Apparently this girl is the only one who can do it. Moving on. Actually, I do have to talk a little bit more about this. I'm sure you guys want a little bit more about this. She moves on to say that she is repairing the distortion between the human world and Soul Society, so that's her job. And so that kind of burst the bubble. I thought it was something epic. Turns out she's just doing like repairs after the Stern Writers invaded. Hopefully we will see something new when we figure out what the package is. There is a panel where there's a very small panel, and it says, you see 2 people, and one of them says, "Now been formed," and the other says, "You're dragging us into this mess." And this is a dialogue, one from each of these people. So that could potentially be meaning that they just got there, and both of them were in each of these packages. Maybe they sent these humans to help her repair the distortion between the worlds. Who knows? And the girl is holding like a painting stick, and then she has like a box full of like some sort of paper in it too. So not too exciting. She's just cleaning up damage. I didn't look up who she was, so if anyone could tell me or figure it out, please let me know. I feel like she's just some girl. I think she was in, maybe she was the girl, one of the fighters in the arc with the what do you call it? The things Ichigo has with the skull. I totally forgot it was called. Fullbring. The Fullbring arc. Was she one of the enemies in that arc? I can't remember. But regardless, not too exciting. She's just repairing damages. Finally, the final scene is, it could lead to so many possibilities. You see 3 characters, and this has been confirmed. I researched it on Wikia. They are simply classmates of Ichigo. They don't have any powers. They're just friends of Ichigo, and they still go to school. Now, since the start of Bleach, I feel like it's been like at least 3 or 4 years, at least in Bleach time, which would mean that Ichigo has probably already graduated high school or college or wherever school he went to But here we are seeing his friends still walking along the sidewalk. Big plot hole there. And they're just walking along, talking to each other, wondering where Ichigo's gone. And here's the big surprise. They nonchalantly mention Soul Society, and then they bring up all these points about Soul Society that they know about. And it's crazy. Like, the first time they bring it up, they're like, oh, it's a total lie. Ichigo lied that he went to football camp because Inui and Chad has gone too. He had to have gone to Soul Society. And I'm like, okay, so Ichigo has probably admitted to his real friends with no powers in real life that he goes to Soul Society and stuff. And then, then the new chief commander of Soul Society just shows up out of the blue. And that's crazy because this guy's the commander, the chief commander of Soul Society. He could have sent any of his subordinates, a captain level or lower than captain level, vice president, vice captain, or even lower than that. But he goes himself. He's the top dog in Soul Society. He goes here with his newfound eye patch, his newfound abilities. And here's the thing. The classmate mentions more information about Soul Society that's very in particular, and she does it so nonchalantly. She's like, you're the captain of the 8th Division, aren't you? During the entire Asian debacle, I recall someone yelling out for you. Now, these were just classmates of Ichigo, so I'm kind of confused here. I think I'm missing something that someone in the comments can probably clarify. That'd be great. But she is saying it in a way like she experienced it, like she was there. But she is just a classmate with no Soul Society powers or Shinigami powers. So unless during the I think it was called Akurura Town or something like that. During the Asian arc, basically, maybe all the townspeople could see what was going on in the sky or something. But I don't know. The other option is that Ichigo explained everything to them, but that can't be the case because she's mentioning it like she was actually there and experienced it. And so she just nonchalantly says this, and the rest of the classmates are just like, whatever. And so she's already shocked that a commander, I mean not the commander, just a captain would go all the way here to talk to them. So she's thinking this is somewhat important. And so this sub communicates that this is super, super important because this is the Captain Commander coming here. He has been promoted to Captain Commander now. And so they don't mention what exactly is going on, but it ends with a cliffhanger, and he just simply mentions that it's about you guys and Ichigo eventually parting ways. For me, not too big a deal, first off, because these are just minor characters. Ichigo parting ways with these minor characters, not too big a deal. I mean, he's never there with them anyways. Like, he's 99% of the time, he's in Soul Society, so it's like, bleh. I mean, okay, there was that huge gap in time after the Asian arc where he was just like a mortal and he had no powers anymore. You know, before the Fullbring arc, after the Asian arc, where he was just like a normal guy. But he hated that lifestyle. He kind of took his friends for granted and he wanted his powers back. So I don't think it's that big a deal that maybe Ichigo will have to leave the human world forever. And so I don't think it's that big a deal, and I'm not really sure why the Captain Commander would talk to these classmates rather than maybe Ichigo's family or some more important friends like Inui or Chad. Maybe everyone else who's actually important in the series can still stay with Ichigo because they can go to Soul Society and come back and forth. But I'm assuming he's just going to say that Ichigo will have to stay in Soul Society after this, having realized where he came from, being who he is. So not too big a deal at all. I'm hoping it's something more than that, because otherwise it'd just be a complete plot hole again. Why would the Captain Commander come all the way here just to say that? I'm hoping it's something more. Maybe one of the classmates might have to sacrifice his life. Probably not, but that would make more sense than him traveling all the way over here just to tell him that. I mean, he's the Captain Commander. He has to prepare for like the biggest battle in Soul Society. If he loses this, everyone gets wiped out. All the Shinigami are dead. And he's wasting time here doing this. So who knows what's going on. So that's it for this chapter. The main thing, if you guys have watched all the way up to here, is we want to see who the Spirit King is. I'm still mainly concerned about that. We've seen that he's an actual person. He's a legit